As chair of the Sanborn Regional School Board's Excellence in Student Achievement Subcommittee, I find due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, the public body is authorized to meet electronically. There is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone, with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the Sanborn Regional School Board's Excellence in Student Achievement Subcommittee have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the following phone number: 1-646-558-8656, meeting ID 967-0366-2989, or by clicking on the following website address, public stream, www.youtube.com/c/SRSD meeting videos. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, including how to access the meeting using Zoom or telephonically. Instructions have also been provided on the website of the Sanborn Regional School District at www.siu17.net. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please call 603-642-8541 or email at helpdesk@siu17.net. D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Okay, move back to, I will start. If I can get back to my meeting. There we go. Sorry about that. Tammy Mahoney, I'm in my home. I'm alone at the moment. Dawn?
Dawn Dutton. I am at home. No one is in the room with me, but my family members are present elsewhere.
Jamie?
Jamie Fitzpatrick, I'm in my home office alone.
Patty?
Patty Haynes, I'm in my office at the SAU.
Heidi?
Heidi Levitt, I'm in my office at the high school.
Okay. Matt?
Matt Malula, I'm at home alone, but family's in the house.
Chris?
Chris Snyder, I'm here in my office at Bakey School. I'm alone.
Ryan?
Ryan McCluskey, I am here at school and I am sharing a space with Kim Conant, who is also a member of this meeting.
Donna?
I'm at Memorial School in a classroom by myself.
Okay. Kim? I know we just got your...
Sharing a space, Kim Conant sharing a space with Ryan McCluskey.
Thank you. Grace?
Grace Evans, I'm at home. No one else is here.
Thank you. Christine?
Yes, I'm at home with a snoring dog.
And Tom?
I'm at the SAU office. It's just me and my baby Yoda.
I think I got everybody. If I didn't, if I missed anybody, let me know. Okay, thank you. We have a motion on the minutes from our last meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor by roll call vote, Jamie,
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Thank you. Aye for me as well. That's unanimous. All right. Okay. Onto the agenda. First item is an update on the Alma. I'm going to turn that over to Dr. Haynes.
So Donna, Christine, Kim, and I spent what was supposed to be an hour, but ended up being almost 2 hours yesterday getting additional training and support from Alma because we have some progress reports going out at the elementary level next week. So I'm happy to report that those seem to be going well. Kim and I were checking in a little earlier. Kim, you said that it looks like it's going well on the teacher end.
Yep, it's going well on the teacher end. And I sat with Bakey School this morning, and I will sit with them again next week. And also I met with all the teams over at Memorial School and the teachers. It's going really well.
One of the things that we're learning with this process is all of the things that Alma can do that the other system could not do. And I've said this story a couple of times to some of you in this call, so I apologize early, but this is similar to like you get a rental car and you get in the rental car and you pull out of the garage and it's raining. And all of a sudden the wipers are going on by themselves. It's like, woo, my car at home doesn't do this. And you drive along a little bit further and suddenly you're discovering all these things that the car can do that you don't have and you've never noticed and you don't know how to use. So we're getting a lot of more features explained to us and shown to us as we're going down this path toward, June when these milestones come up, and progress reports was one of those. So that's one of the big pieces that was taken care of this week. But overall, I'm just going to defer to the building leaders to just talk a little bit about how things are going and what you're discovering. Ryan and Chris, you want to get started?
Sure. So I met with our team leaders this morning to review Alma and the timelines and all of those things. And I know Kim was part of that same meeting, and so was Donna, actually. So they've been tremendously helpful with our teams, just asking the kind of where the rubber meets the road questions. And I think based on what I saw today, the progress report template that Patty, you've been working very hard to get up and running, seems to be populating grades, and our staff is certainly working hard to get them in there. So on that end, I think, like you said, it's working. We're working our way through whatever kinks are there. So that's where Kim and Donna have been instrumental in helping our staff address whatever questions they've had along the way. So that's kind of the here and now. We haven't had to print them yet or anything like that, but that's coming very quickly.
Sure, I'll jump in. From Memorial's perspective, similar to what Chris said, I think that there's a very big kudos for Kim and Donna as well as Patty. There's been a lot of back end work that has had to go in and is ongoing, to be perfectly honest. But I do believe that we're at a spot from a K-6 perspective where we can move forward and provide the community and parents specifically with some feedback on academic progress, both encompassing, the remote period as well as our in-person period, which I think will be beneficial. We also have some parent-teacher conferences that'll be coming up and communicated to families in early December. And part of the purpose of that parent-teacher conference is going to be to have conversations with parents and make sure that they understand how to access Alma, what they're seeing when they get in there, and those types of things, as well as just kind of the general expectations for a grading software system that's going to be live for the first time at a K-6 level, which is going to be a new experience for parents. So, teachers are going to do some heavy lifting and really try to make that communication and understanding clear over the next couple of weeks once we go live in December.
Christine and Heidi and Matt, you want to just speak a little bit about how things are going at the secondary level?
Well, I guess I could begin. On the teaching end, we ironed out all the issues with, entering assignments, grading and whatnot. I know Heidi, you've been trying to handle senior grades and getting those out to colleges, and there are some snags with that. And we're going to meet with Alma tomorrow afternoon because Heidi needs to put together progress reports, right? Is that true?
Yeah. Yeah, we
And
have to
there's-
send first quarter grades to colleges, so we were just in the timeline of getting things into Alma, wasn't working with the colleges, but we worked it out with the colleges, and we are going to be sending it by the end of November. So that's the date that we're looking at.
Yeah, so again, it's like, it's a new system. So the first time, Heidi's generating progress reports, there was a snag and we just couldn't get things to play right or things to report out correctly. So we have, I doesn't know this yet, but we're gonna try to meet tomorrow at 1:30 with Alma. It looks like they can meet. And
Fantastic. What
yeah,
better way to spend a Friday afternoon?
well. So yeah, there's little things like that have happened along the way, but slowly we're getting things ironed out. It's just, we don't know. I find that I keep saying, I don't know what I don't know. Like until we try to do something, we don't know if it's set up correctly or if we can correctly, utilize it. So it's just, this year is going to be a bit of, trial and error at times. Like it's just the way it goes. Takes a bit of patience and flexibility from everyone, but hopefully we get everything ironed out soon, like within the next couple weeks.
Hey, compared to the amount of flexibility and frustration that we had with Wazzle, as bad as this is rolling it out, which all new SIS systems are very challenging to roll out for schools, I just wanted to say, hang in there, right? I've done this before. This is my 4th SIS system that I've seen rolled out or rolled out personally. And you guys are doing a great job. It's just the normal process of figuring out as you go. So I know it can be hard.
Christine?
So I would echo what Matt and Heidi had mentioned regarding part of the rollout, hitting some snags, some roadblocks, working through them. Both Patty and Kim have been wonderful working with 7-8 as well as Megan Arena, our guidance counselor, has been doing a lot of work with it. Alma has been very helpful as we've come across and tried to navigate the system for myself, for the guidance department, and also for our teachers. Their help desk has been wonderful. They've gotten back to staff within an hour. So it's been wonderful to have that with them. Also the middle school for 8th grade. Some of our students that are attending private schools, we've had to send their first quarter grades out as well. So things of that nature seem to be working much better, figuring out the percentage system. So things are in a better place than they were even 2 weeks ago.
And our first iteration of the progress reports that are going home are set up so that the parents see exactly what's in the grade book, and it's pretty much translated over as a way to orient parents to what's in there, what kind of information is available. And as we figure out what it is we want to see and not see, and there's a lot of different pieces in the template to add or move around and things like that. So we can do a lot of different designing with it. And it says right on there that it's a first attempt. And that's one of the things that we'll be bringing back to this committee also, is talking about how report cards later on in the year would look. And we're going to be, designing and trying out a couple of different iterations as we go through the year until we settle on something that we like, because there's a lot of different ways to represent things. Whether it's the way it appears or the way that it's presented or the different components or, where they're even located on the page. So those are all things that we're working through as we get used to the system and how things are going. Any questions for any of us?
Jamie?
Not so much of a question, but just listening to everybody, it sounds like we're still pretty much in we're still wrestling this beast to the ground to try to tame it scenario at this point in time, and not in wow, look at all the things it can have. We might notice that the wipers can turn on, but right now it's biting us in the legs and other parts of our anatomy, and we're still trying to get it under control.
A little bit. And one of the things that Donna Donnell reminded me about earlier this week is we really just got this thing up and running a little bit into the beginning of October, because we sort of were behind the curve when we got this approved in July. Then we had some stuff going on in the summer and getting things migrated. So we've really only been in there for a little bit over a month and a half now. So having spent maybe 6-7 weeks with this, I think we're in a better place than I thought we'd be. And you know, there's more to learn, but you're right, we're still, Jamie, figuring stuff out. And having, you know, I don't know, a global pandemic to deal with on top of it all, this is exactly helping. But we're doing the best we can, and we have a great team, and everybody's, you know, figuring it out.
Birthing pains for new systems aren't a lot of fun. It's just a struggle. And I think Matt used the word patience. That's, yeah. So thank you, and keep trucking. It'll come.
Are you getting much feedback from the community, from the parents? I've seen some on social network that seemed like they were struggling. Some parents were struggling to get their kids' grades.
So some of that could be due to teachers entering grades, how they're entering grades, and we're working through some of that at the secondary level. The K-6 level, they'll just be getting their letters with these progress reports next week about how to log into the portal, and we'll get the portal turned on so that they can access that. And I think some of it's a combination of teacher practice combined with parents getting used to what they're looking for and what they're looking at. And as we continue along the road here the next few weeks, we'll make sure that the parents are seeing what they need to see, and that they understand, you know, what's available in there. I know Kim and Donna spent some time with the elementary folks making sure that something as simple as turning on the level colors. So red means this is not a good score, and green means this is a good score, is displaying, so that when parents finally log in there, it's very visual. You can see, oh, you're getting a lot of greens, or oh, geez, what's going on with all these reds? So some of those things, and spending time to train them up and really prepare them during the conferences and really get them acclimated, I think is going to help too.
Anything else? Oh, Dawn?
I just want to apologize for being a pain in the butt, because I've been one of those parents that's been asking questions because I didn't understand some things. So, you know, I'm not trying to be a pain. I'm just trying to, you know, get clarification. So thank you guys for sitting down with me and listening.
We want this
we appreciate
to be the vehicle of communication. And that's the one thing that we keep emphasizing with everybody who's interfacing with it. This is a communications vehicle more than a report card. We actually want to get away from printing physical report cards, progress reports, and sending them home. And what's nice is you can, you know, deploy this by email, but it's a way to communicate so that you can keep track of, you know, what's your child doing in school, and you can communicate with the teacher. So it's really more than just a system of, okay, what did you get today? So we're here to make sure that it's doing that.
And don't forget, as a team, that we're just rolling out the gradebook component this year. There's an entire student information system module, and it can house the curriculum and the curriculum mapping, so that not only can you see how your child is doing in relationship to their schoolwork, but you can also eventually see that in relationship to the scope and sequence of the curriculum in the plan for the year. That's next year, right? So it's just important to remember that this is a very exciting, dynamic software. And as I'll say it again, I'll echo Jamie that rolling it out's hard, but I think it's going to be so worth it in the end, right? So if you're feeling a little frustrated or burned out on it, just hang in there, because it's already getting better. And I did want to take just one quick moment to acknowledge Patty's efforts on behalf of this work. She has really done a phenomenal job of being a liaison between Alma, working with the administrators, and Patty also bears the burden of seeing where gaps in our assessment practices and grading practices are coming up, and trying to figure out a plan to rectify those gaps. Because whenever you become more transparent, you start to see what's working and what's not working. And Alma's really good, and it's showing us some things, and she's right on top of it. So I just wanted to thank everyone for everything, but particularly Patty put a lot of hard work into getting all these trainings set up and facilitating everything. And that's been critical, especially with all the other challenges we face this fall.
I'm just enough of a geek that I enjoy this kind of stuff. And if this was all I could focus on, I'd be a heck of a lot happier. But there's some other things going on. But thank you.
All right. Okay, you mentioned assessment, so that's kind of a good segue to our next agenda item.
So
Assessment.
we're coming to the end of November. Yay! I think I'm trying to remember where I put. Oh, so in the next Tuesday view, every Tuesday we get a newsletter from me in the district. I recognize all of the hard work that's been done by everybody doing all of the assessments, and I think 700 revisions to when we're doing the assessments and the calendars and things that have gone out. Because of the changes to the statewide assessment system, which are finished. Those were done, those are out of the way. And that information is not anything that we're going to use. That was something that the state wanted to collect. We did those, they're done. They're not even going to provide us with any kind of beneficial information because fourth graders took a third grade test. It's not going to tell us anything. So it was an exercise in testing the system, I guess, futility. I hate to say that, but so the students did that. The NWEA testing for grades 1 through 10 is pretty much done. I think in speaking to Grace, and Grace, you can correct me if I'm wrong, by the 30th, high school should be done, correct? Yep, she's nodding. So yeah, first and second grade, I wanted to make sure that they were done in person just in case we had numbers going up. I wanted to make sure the little ones didn't have to test remotely if we didn't have to do that. They got all done with their testing. Kim has been working, and Donna, with a group of teachers who were, they became like the remote testing ninjas for NWEA. They are like flawless. Karen Parr, Renee Phelan, Sarah Campbell, Taylor Libby. They really just took the bull by the horns with our youngest K through 6 kids and really got them through the remote part of the testing, which is tough because you've got parents on the other end who don't know what to expect, and so they really were worked through that pretty well. So that took care of NWEA and the statewide assessment, so that's out of the way. And then Heidi has some information to share about the SATs that were done on October 14th.
Can I share my screen here, Patty?
Dan, is that available for Heidi?
Yes, it is.
Should be. We did on the other one.
Okay, yeah, you can try it.
So I have just a couple of slides with the SAT data from this year's class and from our class that just graduated in June. So this is the students for this year who took, and this is just basic. We haven't delved into it too much. We just got the scores last week. But this is for this year's senior class, but it's their junior year SAT. They took it on October 14th. So you can see we had 104 students take the test. 18% met both benchmarks. And you can see what the math and the reading and the writing. And then this is just raw data around the average scores, the state average scores, national average scores. And that's, again, for this current senior class.
Heidi, can you go back one slide for 1 second? It went a little too quick for me.
Sure. And I can't see you guys because I'm looking at my screen, so stop me, and I can't see if somebody's raising their hand to ask a question.
So can you just walk through these for a second? So our schools show that 56% of students met in reading.
Correct.
And 20% met in math.
Correct. And we have 13% who are in that yellow zone who are approaching who are just almost there, but just slightly off. And we have 67% in math who really need some work on their math skills. But I don't think that that's anything that we didn't already know. And then I think, as we know, it's important to remember that these students took this test before they were even back in school. We came back to school on October 26th, and they took the test on the 14th of October. So they'd been out of school out of doing regular traditional school since March.
Yes, yeah.
So I would imagine that these scores would be lower than what we would hoped. These were the students, though, who had opted into taking the test. These are kids who felt like they really needed the SAT for their post-secondary plans.
So I just want to point out, Grace, I can't see you, but you're on the call. There you are.
Hello.
I scrolled down. Grace, I think it's really important for you to take this data and pull apart why we're at 20% and what, I'd really like a detailed summary of what are the questions that are a problem? Are there any trends within the questions? Is there a gap in the curriculum related to these questions? I would like you to really, really dive deep into this. I'm sure you probably already have.
Yes.
So okay. All right. I had a feeling that was yes.
Yeah,
was the answer to that.
I've been, like Heidi is saying, this is not drastically different from the previous years. So in looking at the class of 2020, I've been seeing some things, and I can talk in more detail at the next meeting.
It'd be great.
You know, I think when we're talking about 20% of students meeting the benchmark, one thing to know is that the benchmark in math just is higher than the benchmark in reading, as in, like, it is harder to meet the math standard because there's like just a point differential that's built into the system. So the difference between math and reading performance is not as drastic as it looks from these scores. But yeah, I think what I've been seeing so far, I have some pretty clear ideas about what's driving these results.
Thank you. And the other thing I wanted to point out to the group is if you look down at the state average, it's 44%. And I just want people to hear from me as a superintendent, I don't consider that acceptable either, right? 20% is horrible, but 44% is still horrible. It's just less horrible. And so we have to really focus as a team. And Matt, you and I have, Matt Malilla, we have talked at length about this. But now that things are kind of getting resolved with budget and other things, I would like Matt and Grace to put together a presentation for the board in December about the following three things. Number one, what is it that is exactly going on with the math scores? What is the root cause? And is that cause attributable to the scope and sequence? So what role does our curriculum scope and sequence have in that? And I certainly would consider 8th grade Algebra 1 as one component of that scope and sequence. And whether or not we're doing 8th grade Algebra 1. And then of course, Kim and Donna, you know that what we do prior to that leads up to that, right? It's all linked, but from the high school perspective, I just want to know, is there an issue with the scope and sequence? And then also, what instructional practices could we employ to rectify the scores? Because I just think that we can, it's time, right? Like it's time I know COVID's really, really hard, and I'm not willing to really ask teachers to do a whole lot different today in this world that they're facing every day. But I do want to have a very clear roadmap for what it's going to look like when this is over, because I'm hoping that okay, I'm not going to say that. But anyway, I'll just say that there's no reason why we can't pull apart the data and have a really good plan, right, as a team.
And I will say SAT College Board is great. There is a lot of data that you can really get into. So if you love data, Patty, you would love it in there.
Well, and the reality is that this is why we hired Grace. We hired Grace to pull this apart and really dig into it. And she has been all fall. She shared a lot of really good information with me. But what I'm looking for is the correlation between the scope and sequence and the instructional practices so that we can make specific changes before we start doing the master schedule for next year. So we want to think about the relationship to the master schedule and our goal of increasing math scores, because in my mind, one of the most important drivers for the master schedule is fixing the math problem.
Yep, and I think your ideas about looking at where the deficits fall within the curriculum is right on track as well.
Thank you.
So this, I guess, are we all set to move on here?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to take a little deeper
I-
look at that, Heidi.
I do
Yep.
have one question though, Heidi. Can
Sure.
you just clarify, if this wasn't the entire senior class or last year's junior class, this
Yep.
opted into this?
Yep, so the state this year, because of the pandemic, said that we could allow students, if parents didn't feel safe having their students come into the school to do the testing, that they could opt out this year. So you'll see that our sample size was only 104 students out of our senior class, which is about 174. So we had quite a large number of kids whose parents opted them out, and they had to sign a form saying that they were opting them out.
Thank you for clarifying that, Heidi. I knew about that, but I'd forgotten, so thank you so much.
Sure. So again, these are just the average scores from the students who just took it on October 14th.
I think Jamie has a question.
Okay,
I can't see everybody, so yeah, go ahead.
now I can't
okay.
see.
Just to make sure I'm getting my head around it, the previous low water mark, if you will, that I recall was 28% in math. Is this 20% equivalent to what we saw previously as a 28%?
Sure, I'm going to bring up the I've been in two slides. So
okay.
This is these are the 11th grade scores for the students who just graduated. So our students who graduated in June. These are April 2019 scores. So our kids definitely, our sample size was a little bit bigger and our scores dropped down a little bit more. 30% met the benchmark then. The benchmark was the same. We had 30% meet the benchmark in 2019 and 20% meet the benchmark. But we went up a little bit in English, reading and writing scores.
Grace?
I just want to piggyback on what Heidi said about thinking about the difference between a spring test and a fall test. So I am going to dig into all this and we'll talk about it in more detail next meeting. But let's think about the difference between April and October, especially with 7 months of remote school in between there. When you're taking the SAT in April, you're in a groove, you're in math class, there's a lot of prep that's happening. So even though these students opted in and they knew the SAT was coming, they had been functionally out of school for several months. They had not been in as clearly of a structured math class leading up to the test. And so I don't want to overinterpret that 10-point difference from 20 to 21.
Grace, I agree with that. Thank you very much.
I would agree as well. And I think we can't discount the anxiety of being in the building for the first time for the kids. And what that experience must have been like, and then just the anxiety, like I said, of just being in person, seeing their friends, many of them for the first time, and then also just thinking, oh my gosh, is this a safe place for me to be, because they hadn't experienced it yet.
Jamie?
So the other statistical anomaly here that would play in the opposite direction is if you have a self-screening of 70 kids out of the mix, one can presume that self-screening is people that just aren't very concerned with math or don't see that as something that they need to be focused on in their future. So if they're self-screening themselves out, the average would be taking your number down. And then the ones that self-volunteered, you would think the number is going up. So this would go back to discussions that we've had about the strength of remote. In my mind, it's so different than being in person, and that's why I'm thankful and glad that we as a district, at least when we stayed remote to begin with, we at least did it in a more coherent and in a more structured form. Because I think if we had not done that, we would be even more disappointed with the results. I really think what happened at the end of last year just really kicked the legs out from under the entire educational process these kids went through.
Yes, and that's true for the whole world. But I think, Jamie, to your point, we did have a really interesting natural experiment with kids being able to opt out. And so what I find interesting about this is that we've sort of gotten a chance to remove the variable of students' motivation for a hot second. I mean, we don't know how many students studied independently and took home books, but we do know which students said, I don't care about the SAT. And so with that population of students removed, to still see these results tells us a lot about like, what are students learning and mastering when they are, say, the 2/3 of kids who are doing all the things they're being asked to do.
Yep.
Can
also
I
say
just
that-
add in as well, being the parent of a high school student, I would agree with Jamie that it has been brutal. I have a sophomore and I have a seventh grader, and they're still remote, and their school district just went fully remote again. They were only doing 2 days a week, so we just kept them remote because we didn't feel like it was worth it at this time. And I just want everyone to hear that seriously, it's really hard. And I know Dawn would agree. I mean, it is really hard when they're remote, and there's no words for how difficult it is when your kids are older and trying to learn biology or algebra. I mean, I spent hours working on algebra last spring.
Chemistry
I was pretty
remote
good
is
in
fun.
math. It's hard, yeah. Okay, so I'll leave it at that, but I just wanted to reiterate as a parent that I would agree with everything that's being said.
Well, I'd like to add one quick thing, Tom. So I would say when we analyze these results, we're going to go back and look at past years as well. We're not just going to look at the COVID year. We should see similar strengths and weaknesses in the previous year's data, because I'm sure there wasn't a significant change in instructional practices or assessment. So we'll go back and look at more of a long-term data, and not just last year, which was obviously for all the reasons we've already discussed, abnormal.
Thank you. And I would like to meet with you and Grace myself to talk about doing a presentation to the board, not just EISA. Right? So that it's a community presentation. It's part of Grace's entry plan, but Matt, we'd love to rope you into that because you're at the high school as the curriculum person. And I think it's good to have, folks, partly because of COVID, folks haven't gotten to know the two of you the way that we normally would. So I know what the two of you are doing, but I'd like you to share what you're doing with the board and the community so that they can get to know the two of you.
One more question or food for thought. If we're at a 20 level with this group of it's the juniors now that took this, or the seniors now that took this?
The current seniors. It was their junior assessment, but they're currently seniors.
I mean, it might be worth consideration, hopefully we continue on, and hopefully the COVID settles down and they get some continuous time in, and maybe we could get another SAT thing for people that wanted to do it, because I'm sure there's a lot of people in that group of 104 that aren't overly happy with their results either. And if we gave them a do-over, for lack of a better thing, it's not really a do-over, it's the data is still there, but we focus on it, and with the knowing that it's going to be there after some focus and the help from what we're trying to focus on, would people be willing to sign up to do it again and just to see how well they can improve? Not likely to be a big difference. I mean, these things are scheduled so they don't see huge swings, but something that kids would be interested in doing and setting as a mark for themselves.
It's certainly something we could talk with the students. Most of the students are like, oh, it's done. I don't need it again.
I know.
And the last thing they want to do is sign up for another standardized test. They checked that box.
Yep, I know.
I think if we want to measure instructional improvement, we have lots of ways to do that. And we'll talk about ways to do that this year and going forward. The SAT specifically is most useful for students going to college. And so individual students who need a higher score will figure that out on their own. But we will absolutely look at metrics for doing some kind of measurement of what this senior class and the other classes are doing this year.
And we just had our, it's called an I Applied Day, where all of our seniors are able to sign up to do free college applications. And that was this past Friday. And the majority of schools are becoming SAT test optional for admittance. They still need the SAT, a lot of schools, for scholarships. Especially merit scholarships, but it kind of took the pressure off once the kids found out that they didn't really need their SAT scores for admittance to college.
I have to say that I'm starting to wonder if COVID's going to be finally the end of the SAT for college admissions. It's been coming very slowly for the last 10 years. And I think that this is going to be the year that the colleges say, it's not a valid predictor of success in college anyway. We all know that.
Definitely is
It's
not.
unfortunate that our state chose that as the metric to measure school success, because it's amazing. But anyway, we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. I'm just simply saying that I think that this time may be the beginning of the end, or the middle of the end.
Mhm.
Ready to move on? Okay. State mandated training.
I just wanted to bring EISA up to speed about some of the other instruction that happens in the district, related to one of the policies we passed on March 4th of 2020, JLDBB, the suicide training. Heidi and I have been trying to figure out since Heidi, last October, how we were going to do this in a very cost-effective, code for free way,
Right.
so that we could be in compliance with the state law, because there's a lot of laws that are getting passed in Concord that end up putting burdens on our teachers to figure out how to prepare them for some other thing and give them training so that they're prepared not only to do the content instruction, but also work with our students. And the suicide training has started with our teachers and staff. All of the people in the district have to be trained. This goes everybody from bus drivers to custodians to cafeteria workers. They all have to go through training, and we opted to use a free module through the Society for Prevention of Teen Suicide that takes about an hour for folks to go through. And then Heidi and her team are going to do a roadshow, so to speak, and meet with the different staff at the different buildings, because the needs are going to be different for, say, first and second grade teachers than they might be for seventh and eighth grade teachers, about identifying what these concerning areas might be that might present for suicide risk factors. So I just wanted the committee to be aware of this, because this is one of the other things that we're also trying to balance and keep going while we're also doing the instruction for our students, the instruction for our staff, and in this case, everybody who works at Sanborn is ongoing. So just so you're aware of where that policy ended up going.
Yeah, the video training it's really quite good, and I've taken it myself, and I'm pretty comprehensive, but also it's not heavy. It's just really talks to teachers about being kind of that first line of defense with students, other than students talking to students themselves, because that's who they're going to go to first, is their peers. But teachers are going to recognize the warning signs that we need to think about more than the counselors are, more than the administrators are. And that's really what the brunt of the online training is. And then what we'll do in the roadshow is really kind of reiterate for them and emphasize the importance of recognizing changes in students. And then we'll talk about how do we Sanbornize that training. So what is kind of, when you as a teacher sitting in your 8th grade social studies class and you have a student, you're worried about what is your next step, because you've never been trained as a counselor. So what do you do next? And so we'll kind of walk them through what a typical scenario would look like for a Sanborn staff. Who are the people you go to? What do we expect as far as contacting folks, and kind of what does that process look like? And we'll also talk about resources and the paperwork that is done to follow up. And then just also talk about that self-care for the staff when they're dealing with something like that, because that's it. It's not something you do regularly, even if it is something you do regularly, it still can be pretty difficult to manage your own emotions when thinking about a student who's thinking about ending their life. So we'll go through staff on that.
And we're also going to make sure that we get our bus drivers trained. We're going to make sure that our custodians receive training. It's obviously not going to be the same kinds of conversations because it's not going to be a classroom setting. But if you hear them talking on the bus, or if you're, cleaning up something in the hall and you happen to overhear, what do you do? So we're working really hard on that too, because we have to be in compliance with that law that was passed starting July 1st. It was effective. They did not give us any wiggle room on that. So.
Donnie? Oh, go ahead.
I was just
Sorry.
wondering, so I know you were saying, and I think it's great that this is happening. I think everybody, needs to understand how to handle these situations. And I love that it's also talking about self-care with the teachers and the staff members. So janitors, bus drivers, does that also include coaches? I know a lot of our coaches are also staff members, but any that aren't, are they? Okay.
We are mandated, the law that was passed that went into effect July 1st mandated that anybody who works for the district. So that's why we've got the bus drivers.
Right.
We've got, and it doesn't even matter, like some districts have their own drivers and that's easy and that's covered. But even if we contract like we do with bus companies, we have to make sure that everybody's trained, because this is a huge concern that, we're missing these warning signs with our young people, and if they're not in school because they're not happy, if they're going to self-harm, it's not a good situation. So we're doing everything we need to do so that we're abiding by our policy and by the state law.
Great, thank you.
Anything else on that? Okay, all right, last item.
So this is a hot topic, the math curriculum search. So K through 6, we started a committee of teachers, and I'm just going to have Donna walk through a little bit of what's going on. But basically, we've got a committee of teachers, one at each grade level, and 2 special educators, one from Bakey, which would comprise the primary grades, and one from Memorial, which is the upper elementary grades. And they are going through a process using a screening tool to begin with to start looking at some programs. So Donna, you want to go through some of the specifics on this and just give us an overview of how things are going?
Oops,
Can't hear you.
I can't, yeah, we're having a little audio problem.
Nope.
No.
Going to try to log back on. So let me fill in while she's out, and I think Kim is walking over to help, which is good. So we've got, like I said, we've got probably 8 teachers working on this committee, and they're using a tool called the IMET. And this tool is something that is used to begin to look at how the different programs that we have selected align with different components of either the Common Core standards or some of the other instructional components that we need to have them use and look at. And as they go through these components together by grade level, they collect information and they answer the questions in this document. And they're collecting all of that, and Donna and the committee are sort of compiling all this in one document, so we've got this all together in one location. Once we have folks look through some more of those programs, and Donna's got the list, and she'll share that with you in a little bit. The next thing will be, we started that, it was like mid-October, probably by beginning of January, we'll be narrowing it down to have teachers pilot some units or lessons in some of the programs that look like they're meeting some of our needs. Now, not only are we going to be using the IMET tool, but we're also going to be looking at some other things that we want to make sure we have because of the way that we know our students and some of those different perspectives. Donna, did you get sound back, or do you want to go over to Kim and use her computer? That might help, because I'm afraid I'm going to miss something important. So we're going to also be looking at some of our perspectives, and then we're going to have some teachers pilot either, like I said, units or lessons in some of these different programs to see how they actually work on the road. What's the road test look like? How does this actually end up performing in class? Is it really what we think it is? And is it as effective as we think it's going to be? We're shooting for having some sort of final recommendations to me before the February break. Donna and I will then look at all of these things, and I will be putting together a report for this subcommittee to look at, and we'll be presenting on which of the programs we would be recommending to the subcommittee should you approve that cost in the budget, which is coming up also. So let's see if Donna, you there?
I'm here now.
Okay, so why don't you fill in the blanks that I might have messed up on?
I don't think you messed up on anything. It's we meet about every other week with work to do in between. We're hoping, we've been gathering by building to start because it's just been easier with the different dismissal times. We'll probably join together in December before we start actually going through any pilots. So we're taking that IMAT, that instructional materials evaluation tool, as a starting point, looking at standards alignment. We want to look at some instructional practices that are built in there and having conversations about strengths and weaknesses relative to what we're seeing and relative to what is in the tool.
I've got a question.
Tammy, can I ask a quick question?
Yes, sorry, yes.
I was wondering if you've discussed as a committee any of the goals to, one of my goals for the district, or not a goal, but I guess it is a goal, maybe not explicitly stated, but I'd like to see as many kids as possible in Algebra 1 in 8th grade. So is the scope and sequence of the programs that you're looking at, are you kind of looking at it with an eye on that goal? And if not, could that be considered, please? I'd like that feedback when you make your report to Patty.
So if we look at instructional focus areas and priority, there is part of the tool is to look at coherence and focus to make sure that it is aligned in that direction. So there is a pathway to make sure students have access to what would prepare them for what you're looking for, I believe.
Jamie?
So probably related to that, but as we're looking at a curriculum at the lower grades, it needs to fill into the upper grades. If we're looking at the data sets from the upper grades and where our weaknesses are and what type of questions that we're seeing that we're struggling with, that ought to be connected and flowing all the way back down, so that these are the areas of concern that we are not delivering on at a high school level that we continue to struggle with. And those are areas that whatever program that we pick at the lower levels ought to be highlighted and focused in those programs. So programs that are looking at those up front and that they're kind of focus on those be the ones that we want to be more tending towards than ones that somehow are softer on those areas.
Absolutely. And that's why we've got a vertical articulation set up. We have K all the way up through 6. Donna has experience of what was going on in 7th and 8th grade. She and Grace are going to get together and talk a little bit more as we get more data about these programs for what's coming and what Grace is seeing with Matt in that report. And we're going to make sure we knit that together so that we can have those vertical conversations, K through 12, to see, you know, how does this go up the ladder? Where are these kids bringing this concept? And one of the areas that Donna has been very good about making sure that the teachers think about are the mathematical practices. The National Mathematics Association, National Math Teachers Association, came out with quite a thick book, I would say, about math practices. And those are some of the other things that we really need to consider, because if we don't have the proper practices and the instructional application, we're going to have issues as well. So we're really looking at two components, not only what are the kids learning, but how are we instructing to make sure that they can apply that math.
And
I
just to
think one of
follow
the
on.
sorry.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. No, go
Just
ahead.
one of the things that you need to note is that this really changed in the curriculum landscape in the last 8 years is that high quality curricula exist. There are multiple highly rated standards aligned curricula, a couple of which are free, that exist at the secondary level. And that wasn't quite as true 6 years ago. There are many that connect primary to secondary. And just what Patty is saying is that what we know from research is that if students have a strong grounding in thinking flexibly and problem solving, There are lots of different curricula that will do that well. And it's not about a specific skill set. It's about a strong foundation across the content. And then that sets students up for success across different metrics.
So more to come, and you'll get a lot more information probably in March once we've got all these pieces pulled together.
Go ahead, Jamie.
So one of the things that I'd be interested in understanding is whether or not these programs at the lower levels have textbooks. I like books, and we do a lot of things without books nowadays, and I think that's a disservice. So I'd be interested personally in knowing whether or not there are actual real textbooks that kids would be working from.
Donna can answer that right now. Donna?
We're still looking through all the materials to see which ones. I don't know if all of them will have a textbook because we're looking at the K-6 range. So we have first and second graders that having a textbook would be a little bit difficult if you're thinking of the traditional textbook where they have to read from it, copy problems, or do you mean a book for them to actually do their work in?
Yes. Both.
Both.
Textbooks, first and second grade aren't necessarily developmentally appropriate, Jamie, as like workbooks where they actually have a book to do their work in, and then they end up with a lot of things that we call manipulatives, like little buttons and things that count. But I think what we're looking at from the materials that I've seen come in, there are materials, there are paper things that it's not just all sort of theoretical, and it's not going to be solely digital materials either. But given the situation we're facing right now, where we're living in, this dual world, we're also looking at programs that have that digital component in case we end up in this sort of situation again.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, go ahead.
Just it's not, if we're done with that, I just, we're going to run out of time, but I was curious as to how the synchronous learning is going from you folks in terms of, we hadn't started that yet. Now we've started it and we've got some time under our belt. How's it going in your perspective?
Well, I've observed 5 classes in the last 2 days, and there are times where it feels kind of normal. It's the teachers are explaining an activity and they do a mini lesson, and then the kids, they start the project or the activity on their own. So it kind of kind of felt almost normal. I mean, smaller classes because we got quite a few kids who were either remote, or we had a number who were quarantining. So, the rooms weren't always full, but, I kind of felt like I was doing what I used to do pre-COVID.
And I think the flip side to that is, I think from an outsider watching, it looks like it's pretty normal, but I think from the teacher perspectives, what I'm hearing is that it's really, really difficult. Making sure that they validate the kids who are in front of them and manage the students who are in front of them and their learning, and then also make sure that they change things and modify things for the students who are remotely, and that constant switching. I think it's really challenging, and I think it's really exhausting. So kudos to our teachers, because we did it for the I Applied Day, and that was one day, and I wanted to go home and take a nap after like 4 hours. And I don't think many of our teachers are napping during the day. So doing it all day long, coming in every day, and they're smiling. And I just feel like we can't praise them enough for what they're doing. And it's really, really difficult.
Yeah, that's a good point, Heidi. Thanks for mentioning that. Like today, I observed an art teacher who was teaching a lesson on watercolors, and she had the document camera going. So not only is she interacting with about 15 kids in the class, she's trying to make sure the camera's lined up, and she's got exemplars on the board, and the observed 3 Spanish classes, and they're constantly saying, Zoomers, how you guys doing? And,
Yeah.
it's got to be exhausting just mentally trying to keep track of all those people.
Yep.
And if the high school teachers are having that reaction, try kindergarten, try third
Right.
grade, try fifth
Yeah.
grade. It's like, oh,
Yep.
forget
Right.
it. It's so,
Herding cats.
and the thing that we keep telling our teachers, they're doing well, no matter how they feel they're doing, because none of us have been trained for this. None of us went to school for this. None of us in this situation. We don't know how to deal with this. And so we're learning as we go. And the one positive that you could pull from this, and maybe we'll think about this in a year or two and look back, because hindsight is always 20/20. We're learning a lot about things as we're going through them now, but we don't have time to process that while we're in it. But when we look back and we think about everything that we were able to do, I think the learning is going to show as far as professionally.
I'll jump in real quick before we wrap up and just kind of echo some of the same sentiments. In the grades 4, 5, and 6, we don't really have fully independent learners. So there's a bit more support that our teachers have to do just on the class to class, day to day types of support that students need. And certainly the strain and the time, I think, Jamie, maybe it was a month or 2 ago, you asked kind of about what's the state of the schools, what's the pulse of the teachers. And, this has been a really heavy lift for them, and I think that's contributed quite a bit to the amount of stress that they're feeling right now. Alma was a heavy lift in a lot of ways too. There's a learning curve there. So, I think our teachers know that they're very much appreciated, but that doesn't necessarily take away from the amount of work that they're doing on a daily basis. And I think that we're all wishing them an opportunity to unplug for about 5 days coming up next week, because I think we all need it, but they certainly have earned it.
It's National Education Week, and we appreciate everybody who works with our kids. So.
Right. And I know we're running out of time. I would just say at Bakey, it just like what you said, Ryan, it's a heavy lift. Our staff is tired. Everything that we have to do is a process. Like, it's to take a mask break. There's 4 different steps that are required, and we've got the youngest learners in the districts, and they just need a lot more hand holding. So no one is complaining that I'm aware of. Like, my staff is coming to school every week or every day, ready to put in the work that's needed to make it happen. And I commend them for that. But it seems like every little thing that we, come up with as a solution then creates potentially another round of, here's another process that we've got to develop and follow through with. So it's happening. And I think in terms of synchronous learning, if you were to ask them now, they probably feel more comfortable with it today than they did when we first started. But I don't know that we're ever going to reach the point where it's just like what would be normal teaching to them. It's just, there's so much involved with it.
Yep. And I think that's what we sometimes forget. And I heard it today from a staff person, was how much longer it takes to do anything. Because you have to think about it in your traditional way for your students who are in person. And then you have to spin it and think about how can you do that for your remote learners so that it still feels like a worthwhile experience for them. And they're not an afterthought. So you want to make sure that they feel validated and that they feel like they're getting the same experience as the students who are in person. And that just takes twice as long, 3 times as long, sometimes 10 times as long to get through that process. We just don't have, the hours haven't been extended in the day to kind of do that. So they're chopping away at other things. They're chopping away at family time. They're chopping away at sleep. Just because to get things done, because they want to still do a good job and have that experience be good for the in-person kids and the remote kids. But they're coming in and they're smiling, and they're doing it because they're professionals and they love kids.
Thank you for the feedback, and thanks to the teachers. I imagine it is very, I imagine they get kind of tired of us on the board continuing to push. I do think your statement, Heidi, we're also trying to make sure that things are right for the kids, and we very much appreciate what they're going through an overextension to do the same. So thank you guys for the honest responses, and thanks to the teachers.
Definitely. John?
Yeah, I just want to say I have 2 remote learners of my 3. And like Heidi was saying, you know, they're doing their best to really acknowledge those remote learners. I have a 4th grader and a 7th grader. And I noticed that the teachers really are always, you know, checking in with those remote learners by name, not just, hey, how are you Zoomers doing? It's, hey, Sierra, how are you doing? Right? Do you need any help? Do you understand what we're talking about? You know, hey, Jade, did you get that? What questions do you have? You know, the teachers are doing a great job of trying to really, you know, keep those Zoom kids engaged. So I appreciate that very much as a parent and as a school board member. And then, you know, are there challenges? Absolutely. You know, there are connectivity issues, there are things like that, you know, but I think overall, given the situation we're in, you know, I can't ask more of the staff. I feel like they're doing everything they can. I think they're doing a great job. And really a lot of the glitches that are happening are technical. You know, it's not a staff thing, it's a technical thing. So, you know, I personally want to say thank you to all of our staff members because you guys are doing a great job. My kids show up to their classes, teachers are smiling, teachers are happy, they're acknowledging them. I can't ask for a lot more than that. I'm not going to ask for a lot more than that. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Dawn, for saying that and acknowledging it.
Anything else on that? Okay. All right. So our next meeting, 4 weeks from today, December 16th. In terms of agenda items, I do notice that Mr. Stack put out some information on the review and revisions that you guys are looking at on updating the graduation requirements and master schedule. And I believe he referenced a presentation that was being prepared. So I wonder if we can expect an update on that.
I'll check
for our
in
next
with him
meeting
to see
here.
if we can add that, or at least an update on the presentation or something, so we can at least address that.
Okay. And then I don't know if there's anything else anyone wants to mention right now, but certainly we'll be working on the next agenda before that meeting. Anything else before we adjourn? Okay. Well, thank you everyone for being here. It's very much appreciated. And we're adjourned.